Mm. Then another sign that, where it says primary importance should be given to witness, So in terms of how much progress we have made in our practice, the two witness, one witness others and one witness yourself. And, among those two, the primary is yours because, someone might think because of our certain behavior or response externally, someone might think and say that you have made a progress, but that necessarily always the case. Sometimes our external behavior and our internal realization might not be same. Even though we haven't made much progress internally, sometimes maybe there might have been some external change, but still maybe internally we haven't really made much progress. And so the others cannot really see your internal, they can only see external. So their view is only based on the external, not the internal. And so whereas the progress of our practice is more internal, and so therefore among those two, then the primary principle witness should be yourself, because we know our mind better than someone's. And so by observing, watching our own mind, then we can realize whether we have made a progress or not, and how much we have made progress. Constantly cultivate only a peaceful mind. Another way of investigating and seeing how much we have made progress is, no matter what happens, no matter what kind of situations we face, if we are able to keep our mind calm, peaceful, then that's a sign of that we have made some progress in our mind training, our practice. Doesn't disturb you easily. Even when we are being challenged by difficult obstacles, and when people around us are not so nice, not so kind, and even when they are sometimes mean, if we are able to keep our mind calm without being disturbed by their action, by their behavior, that shows that you have made some progress in your practice of mind training. And so that is how we should try to train to keep our mind peaceful, calm, and not be easily kind of disturbed, upset, annoyed easily by people's action, behavior, or surroundings, whatever, and if we can keep our mind calm, peaceful, then there's no reason to get angry, hatred, and therefore no reason to make the problem bigger, and there's no reason to suffer more, and there's no reason to create more negative karma. And so to be able to do that, we have to practice letting go of attachment and worldly concerns, If we can do that, then, because of worldly concerns, when we we're attached to the gain, and because we're attached to the gain, we have aversion to the loss. So when something lost, wealth, such as wealth, when we when we don't make a gain or when we lose, then our mind is disturbed, unhappy, and then that could lead to anger, hatred, and all of that, all other negative emotions. And because we're attached to, whether it's whether it is a sensory pleasure or mental pleasure, if we're attached to that, then we will have aversion to the opposite of that when we experience unpleasant sensory level or mental level. And again, when we are faced with that, then again, our mind can easily be very sad, disturbed, unhappy. And then if we're attached to, fame, reputations, then again we have aversions to becoming infamous or insignificant, when we don't become so object or well spoken among friends, among society, where you feel you are insignificant. You are no one. And so then again, when that happens, then we have disliking to such, aversion to that, and again we get disturbed by that. We start to feel very negative. Why people are not talking about my good job, my contributions, about my all different things, then we can come and then we start to become resentful, negative, and all of that, because we want that fame, that reputations, and so on that. And then if we are attached to praise, people praising in front of you how nice you are, how good you look, how kind you are, how nice person you are, how great parent you are, how grandchildren you are, how great for all of that. Then we have aversion to people criticizing you, And then because of that, if someone criticizes you, even constructive criticism, even criticism, not necessarily criticism, even someone points some of our faults, our weakness, instead of appreciating that, someone pointing that, so that we can actually grow and learn and become better, we get very disturbed. We feel that someone is trying to humiliate you, trying to kind of put you down, all kind of things, make you feel bad, all kind of things. And again, we are unable to take positively because we have an aversion towards that. And the aversion comes because we have so much attached to the opposite of that, wanting to hear praise, pleasant all the time. If someone doesn't praise you, you begin to doubt yourself, your ability. You are doing great, but someone didn't praise you and say what you did was great. Then you started to doubt, maybe I'm not great, or I'm not doing good, just because someone didn't praise you or said that. But someone who is not attached to that, then, if you don't have attached to them, it doesn't matter whether someone says or not says it. It doesn't matter. And so, so when we have those attachment to the fourth state of that being, and then aversion, the opposite of that, then our mind can be so easily disturbed, annoyed, disturbed all the time. As you see, things are impermanent, everything changing all the time. All the time. The situation changes all the time. People praise you, sometimes people criticize you. Sometimes we have a pleasant experience, sometimes we have unpleasant experience. Sometimes we gain, sometimes we lose. sometimes we have nice reputation because of whatever our actions, whatever, and sometimes people doesn't agree with that, and then they start to talk bad about you, and you have bad reputations. All of this, people's view change, our action changes. Due to that, there is always change, and when there is change, our mind is always kind of up and down, disturbed. But when we really practice Lojong and that, and to let go of such a clinging, grasping attachment to that, then we can keep our mind more calm, regardless of whatever changes, regardless of different things that happening in our life. Your mind is peace and calmful, even when you gain or even when you lose. Your mind is calm and peaceful, even when you have a pleasant feeling, even when you don't have not so pleasant feeling. Your mind is calm, even when someone praise you or someone criticize you. Your mind is calm and peaceful, even when you have good reputation or even when you don't have a good reputation. To be able to keep your mind calm, not affected by that. And so that's a really good sign of when you are able to keep your mind calm, peaceful in all those different whatever happens. To keep your mind calm, peaceful, despite all this kind of storm around you, tornado around you, then that's a really good sign of having made progress in our Dharma practice, in our mind training. Otherwise, as some of the Katama masters says, when everything's good, when you have everything's going good in your life, it feel like you're a great practitioner. When something goes wrong, then you behave like very ordinary beings, as though you have not met the Dharma, as though you have never practiced the Dharma, same as people who have never met the Dharma, same as people who have never practiced the Dharma, same complaint, same reaction, same response. So then, so they say, the difficult situations, challenges are like the evaluating machine for us, where our practice is. So the measure of trained mind is that it has turned away, and there are 5 great marks of trained mind. So those are the one just mentioned, and then one, the trained mind retain control even when distracted. And so again, just like in everything, when you are trained, so effortlessly you can remain even when you, like when you are, let's say, memorize certain things. Even your mind is distracted, so you can recite that. Or you can do certain things, even when you're distracted, you continue to do that because you are so trained to that. Different things that we are so, and same thing, without any effort and without having to pay so much strong mindfulness introspections, without any strong of that effort, even without that kind of effort, when things happen in our life, that we are able to be aware of them and to be able to not be disturbed by all of that effortlessly, and that is sign of that, that you have make a progress in your practice. At the moment, even we try, we have to put so much effort, isn't it, to change our perception, to change our attitude. Not so much effort not to get disturbed by that. We have to put so much effort not to be disturbed by someone's behavior, someone's actions. It requires a lot of effort. It doesn't come spontaneous so easily like that. But when someone's trained through practice over the time, then they don't need to put any effort to do that. They don't need to put so effort to do that. It becomes very spontaneous, natural in that. So then 6, the commitments. And so the commitment of the mind training, don't go against the mind training. Yeah, I think in the verses, it says always train in the 3 main things. So those are the 3. Don't go against the mind training you promise to observe. So, whatever commitment, precept that we have taken in our life, it can be lay vows for a lay practitioners, the Pratamosha vows, the lay vows. For monks and nuns, of course, there are monks and nuns vows, Pratamosha vows. Then for others who have taken Bodhisattva's vows, precepts, or those who have taken refuge precepts, and then Bodhisattva vows, and for those who have taken tantric commitments, precepts, all of that. So whatever we have taken, those commitments, the vows, precepts, try to observe them mindfully and purely as possible. So it is very hard not to kind of be deluded sometimes, but being very mindful and aware and trying to put effort not to do that, not to break those commitments, not to break those precepts, vows. And due to not being mindful, or due to the delusion to being too strong, sometimes if you do break, recognize that immediately, and then we try to do purification immediately, and then we try to restore it, and then I can try to preserve them. One of the problem is sometimes, what happens that I often see people, we tend to do is, when you break one time, then because I've already broken, so therefore you wouldn't pay much attention. Then even you have broken one time because of not mindful or whatever reason, you do the purification, and again you don't try to break again. And that one I see in that those different commitment, people have done commitment, and then one day they forgot to do commitment for whatever reason, and then they think I'm breaking, so therefore then they stop doing it. That's much more worse. So you do the purification, and again you start doing that. And sometimes also same I see with people who are trying to become vegetarian, trying to be vegetarian, and they become vegetarian, and then for whatever reason they have to eat non-veg because of the health issue, or maybe sometime or certain situations, or maybe by mistake. Then again they start eating from next because they say, oh, I've already eaten. That doesn't mean that I can restart the next day from. And so that is we have that kind of mentality a lot of time. Don't be reckless in your practice. So, yeah, and the main practice of the the mind training and bodhisattva is actually, not to hurt and harm others. That is the whole essence of all those precepts, commitments, vows, all those different level of vows, commitment. The essence of that is those are the tools, the vows are the tools to refrain from harming others, hurting others. And they are tools to be more kind, more compassionate. And so that is the thing. Try all our best, intentionally, trying to be kind, compassionate, trying to help as much as we can. And if we cannot help, at least try to not, intentionally try not to hurt and harm others. Try not to hurt and harm others. That is the whole essence of all those vows. Don't be reckless in your practice. What it means is, because when we train, when we are practicing the lojong, so because we are trying to, the practice of lojong is to reduce and overcome the selfish attitude and our egoistic selfish attitude, and then the self-grasping ignorance. So again, in order to show up that you don't have any kind of grasping, you don't have any, then you show up with your to others, and so it is saying that you shouldn't do that. In order to show up your practice, so you don't pay much attention, because you think, because show up that is all in internal, and therefore since I don't have those or less of that, and then sometimes we can show up, not being careful with your behavior, your actions. And sometimes, as I mentioned before, and sometimes people think because they have an understanding, realization, and emptiness, so therefore they don't have to behave properly. Do you get it? And there is this idea, those practice of such as moral discipline is for the very beginner who doesn't have the realization of emptiness. If you have high realization of emptiness, there is no moral, immoral, and therefore you can almost do whatever you want. And such, there's a lot of mistaken understanding of that and that. So not only there should be less of those inside and more loving compassion inside, but also your actions, your physical behavior, your verbal behavior also should correspond with that. Don't be partial, always train in three general points. So, being patient, for example, with the patience of the harm of someone and not being patient with harm of someone, or being tolerant with someone's harm and not being tolerant with someone's harm. Do you get it? So we should be patient and tolerant with all the harms. partial being is, for example, I'm tolerant if my children harm someone, and I'm intolerant if my enemy harms someone else. They engage in the same action harming, but I'm tolerant with someone's action and not tolerant with that. Do you get it? And that we see a lot again, We can be tolerant with people whom we like if they make mistake. We can be tolerant with that. But someone you dislike, if they make the same mistake, we become very intolerant, very upset, very angry. That is being partial. In the scriptures, it explains being tolerant with humans harm and not being tolerant with spirit harm. But more than that, I think to make it more clear, the example I give, being tolerant with someone you like, your children, your parents, your friends, and not being tolerant for the same actions of someone. That's being impartial. That's one. And then another partial is, not being, again, another general thing that we shouldn't practice impartial. Practicing impartial is that when someone has, high reputation, more rich, more powerful, we respect them. And someone who have less of that, poor, less high power, all of that, then we tend to kind of look down upon them. Again, being partial, discriminating in that way. Even though both are human beings, even though both are sentient beings, but we treat differently. We discriminate and become partial, and we treat them very differently. Because someone is more educated, someone is less educated. Because someone is more rich, someone is less rich. For whatever those different reasons. So as we train, then we should always train to not to discriminate on the basis of that. We should try to practice being respectful for all sentient beings, regardless of their status, without impartial. So that is one of the advice. And it reminds me of, again, the verses Shantideva says in his Buddha way of life, we treat very highly to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. We regard them very highly, but we treat the sentient being very badly. But he says they both are equal in terms of being helpful to cultivating our loving kindness, compassion, progressing our path, all of that. They both play important role, but then we discriminate. So it is kind of almost like similar in a way. And then being discriminating and partial, having a compassion to those which we feel close, and then having a aversion, anger to those which we dislike. Then again, instead of that, then we try to learn to be compassionate, loving kind to all sentient beings. Whether they are related with us or whether they are not related, whether they have been kind to us, whether they have not been kind to us, whether they are, instead by understanding they all are sentient beings who want to be happy and who doesn't want to suffer. On the basis of that understanding, then we train to cultivate love, compassion to all equally, without being partial. So that is the Bodhisattva's practice, and that That is when we practice Lojong, that is how we should train to do that. Of course, it is again not going to be like that. It comes with the time and practice. But that is how we should inspire and try. Inspire to do like that and try to practice that way. Transform your attitude but maintain your natural behavior. So here again, it is saying while through practice, through practice, you have transformed your attitude from being too selfish to non-selfish, from being too self-centered to non-self-centered, being too concerned with yourself to being more concerned with others. Even though we have changed that transformations through practice, but at the same time, you shouldn't show out those inner transformation in your behavior. You should behave normal as that you are, without people kind of being aware of that to some extent. So the transformation happens, but and that is the otherwise it can become obstacles and cause for us to disintegrate or maybe deteriorate from our practice. When everyone started, oh, you are so great, you are a great practitioner, you are so compassionate, you are such a selfless, and then our practice is still beginning and not so strong, and then you begin to, again, we talk about this morning, and then you think you are more special than you are, then you begin to think you are maybe something more superior than others, and that is where all the where all this abuse comes, and then they begin to feel they can do anything. When everyone started to treat you like that, then if you don't have a strong practice, then you begin to think you are something more special, and then you can do anything that you like, and then that is where a lot of abuse happens. So there is danger. Instead, you just remain as a normal, ordinary. Even though there is big change inside, externally, you show as you are a normal, ordinary. So then people doesn't treat you so, and then that's an obstacles for your arrogance to grow, misperception that you are something very special and this, all of that. Then it does not become an obstacle for your practice, for further progress. Otherwise, we have made some progress in one area, and then it can lead to another, as we mentioned this morning, kind of deteriorating in another areas. So that to continue to make more progress. Of course, it is one thing, okay, in a way. And so that is, a lot of the great cities, those who have achieved great realizations, sometimes they act like crazy persons. Their act is not like a enlightened beings. And I think sometimes that is where inside their realization is very highly developed, but external behavior sometimes they just behave like crazy. They never show that they are so enlightened from that perspective. And so basically we try to just keep it quiet. Not to show off your inner realizations, unless there is a good reason to benefit others, to share. And there is no danger of becoming an obstacle to your own personal growth. Don't speak of others' incomplete qualities. So, when we see faults in others, whether it's their disabilities, or of physical disability, mental disability, whatever, or whatever faults that they might, in that case, especially here is talking about disabilities, um, you know. So we try not to talk about that, even though maybe someone is blind, someone is deaf, someone is what you call who cannot speak mute and all of that, or someone is handless, whatever, all of that, even though if you say that, even though it's truth, but if it hurts someone by saying that to that person, or because someone will gossiping about that person, saying something about that, because it can have negative impact and harmful act, our such speech can have a negative impact on others, harmful effect on others. So therefore we should refrain from that, doing that. Don't concern yourself with others' business, So basically, saying, sometimes we never know others. So be more mindful, or before kind of thinking about, sometimes we might see someone's actions as something bad, and so basically we might have such a lot of judgmental thoughts, that person is bad, this person is bad because of such actions, because of such attitude, because of such view, and all of that. So we can have very negative thoughts about someone based on your interpretations of their behavior, their actions, based on your interpretations of what is good view, what is bad views, based on your interpretations is what is good attitude, what is bad attitude. All of that, on the basis of all that, then we started to think bad about that person, talk bad about that person, think negative about that person, talk negative about that person. But we never know. We never know. We think a lot of time it's not my interpretation, is really there. Well, a lot of time is our interpretation, nothing more than there. Based on how you grow up, how you're brought up, what kind of education you get, how much you are exposed to things, to what kind of news, what kind of information you are exposed to, what kind of culture you are exposed to, what kind of thinking that you are exposed to. Lot of view about bad, good, all is influenced by all of those. So it's more of our interpretations. And even in our own case, we might change our perception about something which we felt good when we were young, and now we feel that's bad. Something we feel is bad at young, sometimes we feel now is good. Not about talking about other person, even within our own perceptions. Certain things before you met Dharma, you think this is the meaning. Great. Now after the moment you think it's a distractions, not a great meaning. There's no meaning in that. The perception will change. But so therefore, you really never know. You really never know. And so therefore, here he's saying, we have to be more cautious and more careful of thinking negative about others based on all of that, and talking bad about them based on that. And so it is all about training your mind, It's all about training your mind. It doesn't come natural for us when you see something, someone's action, something, immediately you think it's a bad behavior, bad attitude. And you immediately react. But then, you can train, well, is that kind of attitude bad? Is that kind of action bad because of my own interpretations? Could it be my interpretations? Because of what kind of education, what kind of things that brought up, could that all of that influence and that? And then you become less judgmental, basically. Do you get it? At the moment, our mind is so quick to be so judgmental. So quick. Our mind is so quick to make certain, immediately some kind of conclusions and judging something very quick. Instead, we learn to practice to not to make those judgments too quickly, and to become judgmental too quickly, not to be too much judgmental, and through that, then thinking and talking bad about others. Train to counter whatever disturbing emotion greatest. And that was where I was talking this morning. I said one of the verses coming. And so because when we talk about disturbing emotion and delusions, there's too many delusions, You name every delusion, we have all of them. So then sometimes we feel lost. Where should I start? So, as I mentioned, recognizing what is the most problematic for us, the greatest problematic one at the moment, and then starting from there. First we recognize that, and then we start to apply whatever meditation technique, practices to deal with that, and slowly to walk. And then as it gets better, then we again recognize what is the next worst one that lead us into greater problems. And we recognize that, again we try to deal with that. So applying that way, gradually in that way, from more strongest growth to more subtle and more subtle and subtle and subtle. Mm. Give up every hope of reward. And so when we are trying to help, you know, or when we are trying to practice, when we are trying to practice of loving kindness, compassion, generosity, when we are trying to practice of trying to help benefit others as a part of our practice, we should be able to practice without any kind of condition, expectations, reward. If we have certain expectations, certain conditions, even our act of trying to be kind, then can become an obstacle for our practice. Then it can become obstacles so that we get disappointed when response or reactions is not the same that you expected. So instead of encouraging that practice, then you get disappointed and discouraged. You're trying to be kind, nice to someone, trying to help, kind, nice to them, but then you have certain expectations, and those expectations are not met, then you get disappointed. And then you become discouraged from being more kind, helpful. And you often hear and see a lot of people, who are totally kind of dedicated, trying to dedicate their life for others, and then certain conditions arises and not met with their expectations, and they become kind of disappointed and disillusioned, and now they don't want to do anything with that. They are done with that. So they think then they don't want to be any more compassionate, anyone service, anyone, that kind of things. And it led to that, even though you had a good intention at the very beginning, but the result ended up in that such because of expectations. If there is no expectations, you just go and help, that is it. Result is not in your hand. You do the actions with a good intention, that is it. Whatever result comes, let it be. And that should be the same with our meditations. If you try to meditate with certain expectations, then that can be very disappointing. But instead, I'm just meditating. Result, whatever happens. You don't expect any positive result, negative result. Just the process of doing the meditations. That is the thing, with a good intention, and just enjoy the whole process of meditation or practice. And when you do that, naturally the result will be better. When you do practice with a certain expectations, naturally your practice will not be as good. And result will be also not so good. And you also often hear, people in meditation, they have some of very nice experiences at the very beginning, and then afterwards they don't have that same experience, and they become kind of miserable because they really want to repeat that experience again, and they get disappointed with each meditations because they couldn't repeat that experience. And then that becomes source of disappointment, and then you don't enjoy your practice. meditations. But when you don't have any expectation, then sometimes all those nice experiences, positive experiences happen out of nowhere. And then we have that experience, and we start to get caught clinging to that experience. And we want to repeat that all the time. And then that becomes obstacles to repeat that. Mm. So when we practice Lojong's, because it's to cultivate loving kindness, to bodhisattva mind, we shouldn't have immediate kind of, we shouldn't have any expectation, immediate response, reaction. Neither we should have any expectation to have a better future life. Neither we should have any expectation to have a, due to this act, that I will be, the act of generosity, that I will be creating more cause and condition to have more wealth in futures, high rebirth, the expectations to achieve nirvana, enlightenment. So we should let go of any kind of that instead. So then whatever practice you do become more powerful. Mhm. Avoid the poisonous food. So it is referring to, any virtuous action that we engage into, or seeming virtues that is motivated by selfish attitude or self-grasping, is what it's saying. Avoid poisonous food. So externally, outside, it seems like virtues, but then inside is kind of motivated by your own self-centeredness and the strong ignorance and that. And so therefore, we should kind of try to avoid, so that try to make that, or whatever practice that we are trying to do, whatever virtuous practice we are trying to, that it comes from good intention, motivations, and some understanding of wisdom, Otherwise, the very practice that we are trying to do enhance our self-centeredness and that self-grasping ego. The whole purpose of practice is to minimize, reduce, and destroy that self-centeredness and this self-grasping ignorance. But instead of being that, then it can become a sense of reinforcing that, your practice, kind of reinforce that your selfish attitude, and that's, so therefore we should avoid such poisonous food of that. Of course, it is hard for us not to have any selfish attitude, even on a very subtle level, and not to have that self-grasping ignorance at all as a beginner, until we have the correct realization of emptiness statically and the bodhisattva mind. But still trying all our best to have less self-centeredness, less strong ignorance, by applying whatever method, practice, so that don't maintain misplaced loyalty. Mm. Mm. don't know whether it's the exact translation. So basically, it is saying, for someone who we feel, someone who has harmed us, when we feel someone has hurt us, harm us, then we hold some kind of grudges, a resentment, and we don't kind of let it go. And so here he's saying we shouldn't do that, we should let it go and not hold in that. So misplaced loyalty is kind of loyalty to our selfish attitude, And due to that selfish attitude, then when we feel someone hurt us, harm us, then we hold very strong grudges and resentment. And we don't give up we don't let it go of that for a long time. And thereby we experience a lot of pain and suffering, create a lot of negative karma. So therefore we should learn to let it go. And instead, for someone who is practicing Lojong, you should see them as more precious, even more precious than those who are trying to help you. And through that, you should try to practice loving kindness, compassion, instead of resentment and grudges. Don't make sarcastic remark. So we don't use any kind of speech, whether it's a harsh word, whether it's a sarcastic word, in whatever that hurts someone's very badly. Whether it is a truth or whether it is untruth. Sometimes we use untruth, sometimes we use truth. There's truth in that, but the way, with a certain intention, and the way we say it, so that trying to get to that person's, and that hurts that person's feelings. So therefore we should try to avoid that such a intention and such a speech that hurts the other persons or the sentient beings. Don't lie in ambush, So sometimes, because we feel someone has hurt us, harm us, and so therefore we hold the grudges and the resentment, and waiting for the opportunity to get back, and always waiting for that opportunity to kind of get back. So that is waiting in ambush. And so we shouldn't be doing that, Because of that, the moment the other person make a small mistake, then immediately you started to point that. Immediately you make that big thing. Immediately you try to kind of spread all of that. Because of your strong grudges and resentment, and that you are waiting to this opportunity, and the moment you get opportunity, you try to take it advantage to hurt and harm someone. again, all of that goes against the very practice of trying to cultivate loving kindness, compassion to all sentient beings, trying to help. It's against that practice. The whole mind training is trying to cultivate loving kindness, compassion to all sentient beings. And so it goes against that. Mm. Don't strike at the vital point, and so you know. For here it is here the Tibetan commentary is saying, like, reciting some kind of mantra to harm or some of the spirit that might be harmful, or trying to bring someone's faults and spreading those kind of things. And so, for example, if you know some secret of someone, and maybe the secret might be not so nice, and then you make kind of spread to bring a bad reputation for that person, isn't it? I'm not doing that. Just because I dislike that person and I have that, then I try to dig all their past, And of course, we all make mistakes sometime in our life, and bring all those faults, all bad things that you did or he did, and then spread that everywhere and bring a really, really bad reputation and destroy that person. Unfortunately, it happens a lot, especially when when you are unable to let go of your bad feeling, ill will feelings. Don't burden an ox with a load of zo. Zo is a mixture of yak and the cow, in Tibet. It's a mix. So that is what actually that the zo means. So when we make mistake, and then we try to throw it to someone else, instead of accepting whatever mistake we make, if we make some mistake, instead of acknowledging, accepting, and trying to transform that, change that, then instead of that, then we say, oh, it was him. He directed me to do that. Or like, so we transfer the problem to someone else, our problem to someone else. We transfer our mistake to someone else. So again, that is where one shouldn't do that. Trying to transfer our own problems, our own sufferings, our own mistake, our own shortcoming to someone else. For a true practitioner of this mind training, we should be willing to take even someone's problem as our problem, someone's mistake as our mistakes. someone's burden as our burden, someone's shortcoming as our shortcoming, not the other way around. Don't abuse the practice.
Okay, Sherab. I have a question going back to the number 14.
Mm-hmm.
When I struggle with this in a work setting of not, like, I make sure I don't throw other people under the bus. Like, I make sure I don't, like, call people out, but at the same time, when, like, how do you practice that in a work setting? If you're taking on, if you're, maybe sometimes if someone makes a small mistake, then you don't need to highlight it and you can sweep it under the rug. But if it's a very big mistake and other people are looking for where did it go wrong.
Here is not talking about if there is some mistake, and by pointing out it can be improved and you have a good intentions. The intention is to improvement of the wholeness of everyone, and it's not to hurt and harm someone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's real truth, then there is nothing wrong with that. It is not, again, here what it is saying, I make the mistake, but I'm not acknowledging. I say, then I'm giving that to someone else.
Okay.
I mess up, and then I make someone the, what you call, scapegoat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So you make someone scapegoat, instead of acknowledging, yes, I'm sorry, I make mistake, and I will try to better next time, and I will not make mistake, I will try to, then we say, we throw it to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, please.
I'll change, if I'm the scapegoat for somebody else and somebody accepts that, yeah, you were a scapegoat, now you can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle it?
Yeah, I think some of those are a little tricky because these are very idealistic bodhisattva practices, and we have to be also practical. And where we are now, and that is, I think, we shouldn't pretend that we are bodhisattva at the moment. Mm-hmm. That is a big problem. Sometimes when we pretend we are not there, and we pretend we are doing, and so there is a struggle between your mind, because you are not totally accepting it. You are just pretending you are accepting it. Okay? You are pretending I'm okay with that, but inside you are not okay, and so there is disturbing you. And so here in this practice, when they really practice, then your mind is not disturbed. Someone said it's your fault, and you just accept. Not only you don't respond with your that, but inside nothing really kind of disturb you. You are even more happy. When we are not that situations, then I think we have to be more kind of honest, and then if it needs to be clarified, it has to be clarified. But again, the whole thing here, the main thing is the intention part. The whole point of all of these intentions. If I'm pointing someone's mistake, am I doing that out of good intentions for the betterness of that person, betterness of the whole organization, all of that? Or am I doing that because I dislike that person? Or because I dislike that person's attitude? Or because I dislike that person's view, or whatever those. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes sometimes it's hard for us to recognize that. It's so subtle. And we think that it is for good, but we are actually pointing those faults because there's some corner we dislike that person's. And so those are the things. But if we are really coming from good state of mind, and especially compassion, love and compassion, then it's good to point out. There's nothing wrong with that when it's coming with that state of mind. And same with when someone make you scapegoat, you know, if we have the good intentions, not wanting to hurt, harm anyone, but just trying to clear the truth, then you should be able to clear whatever you need clarification that it should be do, so that everyone understand what really happens and what was the real mistake and where did it really go wrong and where we should fix the where, instead of just trying to hide the real situations, and then kind of throw it somewhere and make scapegoat, and then not trying to look the real situation and fix it. Then it hurts. So therefore, definitely, there's nothing wrong in that, of clarifying of those things. And so don't abuse the practice. And so here it says we do the practice, if we try to practice in order to get offerings, reputations, due to that, in order to, we do practice so that people think you are a good practitioner, so therefore they will help you financially, or that, they think you are a good practitioner, so therefore you have a good reputation, fame, so on and so on. If we do practice out of such motivations, then you are abusing the practice, because the whole point of practice is to reduce such attachments, the delusions. So now you are doing practice out of delusions, so then it doesn't become antidotes towards delusion. Instead of becoming antidote of delusion, the practice become way to kind of fit the delusions. And so therefore, in that way, you are abusing the practice. You are not doing the practice correctly, properly. Don't scream to win the race. And so here it says, in order to in the deep, in long term, you want to win, but then short term, the way you express as though that you are losing it, showing that kind of things is spring to win the race. Don't sprint. If you do that, then or also here it also says, if we do the practice of lojong just for sake of, to pacify immediate needs like sickness, and to pacify immediate obstacles and so forth, then again that practice does not become true Bodhisattva's practice, Mahayana practice, Lojong practice. And so that is like sprinting to win the race. The practice should be to overcome those delusions. Mm. So, those Lojong practice really kind of crush our really the selfish attitude, self-centeredness. Normally, even when do some practice, sometimes our intention is, when we have certain obstacles in our life, the reason why we practice is to overcome that immediate obstacles, instead of seeing that practice to destroy our delusions. So, even though it can be so powerful, we use it for very, very small things. So in a way, misusing it. The very technique, the very meditation, the very practice that should be practiced in order to overcome those delusions, then somehow instead of using for that, then we use for like that, and so then for that does not become a really as meaningful, and as much meaningful. So here is saying, don't do that. Don't turn gods into the devils. So it is similar to, I think we already discussed a little bit before. The practice of the Lojong, of the such practice, our Dharma practice, should act as antidotes to reduce and minimize our delusions. Instead of that, if we become more arrogant because you are practicing that, then it is like the Dharma has become not an antidote, but actually a way to increase your level of selfish attitude, delusions. Dharma should be like a God which can overcome the evil of the delusions, selfish attitude. But instead of that, then it becomes a way to increase that delusions. And so it shouldn't act like that. And then it is that is where in some of the Lambrim they give an example. They say that is the worst thing. That is the worst thing when the practice, the Dharma itself, become a source to cause condition or source to manifest the delusions. Then nothing helps. Nothing can help. So they give an example, like in the like when you have the skins, when you are trying to make it a very soft, you put butter and then you rub and it becomes more and more kind of what you call softer. That's how you make it. But they use this skin to keep the butter in the old times, like we freeze it so it doesn't get bad. And because that butter has been that skin for so long time, no matter how much you rub, it will never doesn't become a soft. At least that is what they say. It's hard to, definitely it's hard to become a soft. So they say that particular skin that's been rubbed to keep the butter, and you can rub that so much it can become a soft like the rest of the other skins. And so they say is someone who has not have not had the Dharma, and where their mind is very unsubdued, through the practice of Dharma, their mind can be subdued. Okay? But when someone has used the practice of the Dharma meditation itself as a way to increase the delusions, then there is almost no antidote. This is supposed to be an antidote for the delusion, but it has become a cause for the delusions. And so that is why it is saying we shouldn't allow our practice to increase the delusions. When that happens, then that is where it says that God turned into the devils. The Dharma itself become cause of delusions. Don't seek others' misery as a means of happiness. So that can normally it can be two way of interpreting, but the most is that we shouldn't seek others' suffering in order to as a means for your own happiness. So exploiting others, harming others in order for your own happiness, taking the life of others in order for your own enjoyment of usage of the whatever that is, for your own pleasure of delicious food, for your own happiness of a nice, kind of animal coat, whatever, for example, like that. So if we have to make a livelihood, then we have to make sure that the livelihood, which is the source of our happiness, temporary samsaric happiness, is a way that it doesn't bring suffering and pain, harm to others. And so we shouldn't, and those who are really, really into the practice of that, then definitely we should avoid such as much as possible. And so don't seek others' misery as a means of happiness. And the precept of mind training, that is 7. Just a second. Okay. Every yoga should be performed as one. So every practice, every yoga, or the actions such as eating, sleeping, meditations, walking, everything that we do in our life, it should be performed by one with a good intention, good motivations. And if we perform with good intention and motivation, the eating itself becomes as practice, spiritual path. If we walk with the right intention, motivations, with the bodhicitta mind, the very act of the yoga, or the very act of walking, become virtues, become positive, become cause of enlightenment, and sleeping, all of that. And so how can we transform all our 24 hours activity into something positive, something virtuous, something cause of enlightenment? And we can transform that but through this right intention, motivation of the bodhicitta mind. And so one should try to do that all the time. All the errors are to be amended by one means. So all the errors, all the faults, suffering that we discuss, and also when we try to practice, we are unable to practice, have a struggle to practice. First, we don't have the desire, we don't have the inspiration, desire to practice. And sometimes even we have the inspiration and desire to practice, there is not much transformations. And due to all of that, sometimes we become discouraged, uninspired, and so forth. All of those things can happen when we are trying to practice the Dharma, when we are trying to practice the Lojong. So when all of that happens, again, similarly, we recognize we are the not only one that we are, who is experiencing those kind of problems. There are many others who have a similar experience, even much more worse, even they face more obstacles than ourselves. With that understanding, then cultivating sense of love, compassion, concern, and then by me experiencing this myself, all these obstacles, difficulties, may others do not have to experience, may I be able to experience on behalf of them, may all their obstacles ripen upon myself, and may they be free from all those kind of obstacles. And may my happiness and virtues become cause and conditions for them to have everything perfect and successful in their practice and their life, so forth. So thereby we try to amend by one means of exchanging self with others. So the one means that we try to change, the means is to the means of exchanging self with others. Normally, we wish all the happiness to ourselves, and we don't wish any suffering to ourselves, and then we don't wish others for the happiness most time. So here changing, wishing them all the happiness and wishing them to be free from all suffering and willing to take their pain and suffering on oneself. And through that kind of changing, of transforming, exchanging self with others, then that is how we try to change all these kind of problems into the path. There are two activities at the beginning and end. And so, as I mentioned that maybe Friday evening, two important activities. One at the beginning and one at the end. And one at the very beginning is the motivation, intentions. At the end is the dedications of whatever practice you do, whatever meditation you do, whatever other form of action you do, trying to help, benefit. So always at the very beginning, try to have the right good intention and motivations. Maybe at the very beginning, such good intention doesn't come naturally. So therefore, we have to put effort to develop bodhicitta, intention, motivation, because it doesn't come naturally. Well, then again, as I mentioned before, through training, we can get better at that and less effort. So at the very beginning, the motivations is not just for ourselves, for the practice, for the meditation. We do the intention of that practice for all sentient beings, for the happiness of all sentient beings, in order to liberate all sentient beings. And at the end, then we dedicate all the virtues, all the positives that we have created, not only for ourselves, but for all sentient beings, for the happiness of all sentient beings, for the goodness of all sentient beings, for the well-being of all sentient beings, for the progressive or development of all the realization, not only within ourselves, but to all sentient beings. So that is the two important yoga or activities at the very beginning and end of, in all actions, especially in our spiritual practice or whatever form of spiritual practice we are doing. Whichever occur, whatever occur, be patient with both. So whether good things happen in our life or whether bad things happen in our life, either way we accept it with the patience. You know, when things doesn't go according to what we wish, the way we want things to go, on many different levels, you know, instead of being overwhelmed, depressed, and very negative about that, being patient with that, accepting that, saying it, thinking, you know, because of this, then as the Katamba master said, we should think this as like the broom that cleans the dirt of all negative karma. So it is like, even though there is a lot of dirt, because of dirt there is a lot of problem, but then because of such experiences, then you are clearing. It is like that broom that clear all those negativities. So then you can see positive happening in the futures. Also by understanding, as I mentioned yesterday, by seeing, you know, this is impermanent. That's whatever is happening is impermanent. It doesn't remain forever. It will also pass. The storm will pass. Knowing that the storm will pass, so that you don't become so depressed, so negative about it. By seeing that situation like a dream, like an illusion, not as so real, as so solid as you feel. When you are able to feel it is more like a dream, is more like illusions, then again you feel less burden, less strong. Also, you know, we can see, again, you use this as an opportunity to cultivate loving kindness, compassion for others. And when you are able to utilize this, your own unfortunate situations as a way to cultivate loving kindness, compassion, and develop on your spiritual level, then you begin to see some kind of meaning in that, positive meaning, usefulness of that. And so when you see that, then again you have less aversions and less negative feelings. And so with many kind of that, you try to be more patience, more accepting of that. And if things goes well in our life, if everything goes in life, of course, normally we are more patient. Naturally, we are more patient, um, more accepting. And whenever things goes, and that is one of the prayers the Katamba master make. I think those are the prayers they make, and that is what they train. They don't pray and train, for me not to have sickness, for me to have not to have misfortune. They don't try. They say, whatever is best, may it happen. If it's best for me to be sick, so be it. If it's best for me to be healthy, so be it. If it's best for me to die before, so be it. If it's best for me to have long life, so be it. If it's best for me to have misfortune, so be it. If it's best for me to have success, so be it. So they train their mind, and they make such prayers, and they train their mind in that way to accept whatever situation manifests in your life as a blessing. Everything as a blessing. Good thing happen as a blessing. Bad thing happen not as a punishment but as a blessing. For us at the moment, good thing happen, it's easy to see as a blessing. Bad thing happen, then we feel it's punishment. And we feel, what did I do wrong? What did I deserve to be in that? What did I do wrong to do that? So you see in form of punishment. But then when you have trained your mind, then you see all of them as a blessing. When you see it's blessing, it's not a problem. All of them. And so it's similar here, is saying accepting and being patient with whatever good things happen, bad thing happens, everything, accepting with open-heartedness, embracing all of that positively. Then, God bought at the cost of your life. And so here he's saying, again, it's the general precept and commitments of our practices, and especially the precept and commitment of the Lojong, the mind training. We should keep them as very precious, as though you will guard your life, at the cost of your life. So you hold your life very precious, and you will try all your best to protect your life from dangers. Same way we should protect all of those precepts and commitment that we have taken very strongly, even in those difficult times. It's easy to keep those precepts and commitment when things are easy, and it's much more difficult when things are not easy, when we are faced with a lot of challenges. So even in those difficult times, we try to preserve, we try to observe, we try to keep those precepts very dear. And probably we need more at that times. Training the three difficulties. So the three difficulties is the delusions. At the very beginning, it's very difficult to recognize. And then at the middle, it's very difficult to overcome. And at the third, it's very difficult to completely stop the continuity of that. So we have to train at the very beginning how to recognize when the delusion arises. Okay? And so again, as I mentioned before, through practice of mindfulness, introspections, practices, then the delusion, the moment delusion arises, you can recognize that. Not only you can recognize that, if you are very strong, you can recognize even before delusion arises, when the conditions are coming together, so it become easy to apply. And then, if the delusion does arises, then at the middle, how to apply the antidotes, the meditation, the technique, whatever different technique meditations. Mm? And then at the end, how can we continue to practice those antidotes? Not just meditating and applying when delusions arises, but even when delusions are not manifesting, we continue to practice, meditate. So we build up that tool strong. So the more stronger your practice, your meditation, then when the delusion arises, then it can immediately kind of destroy it if you have a strong. Otherwise, if you are not strong, then when you try to meditate, then the delusion wins. Delusion is too strong. Mm. And in order to recognize the delusions, then we have to study a little bit about those delusions, and identifying when particular delusion arises, identifying, oh, this is anger, oh, this is resentment, oh, this is grudges, oh, this is attachment, oh, this is jealousy, oh, this is pride. So through some study, first we study and then we observe our own different emotion when they arise and identifying, oh, this is it, this is it, this is it. Otherwise we know something is happening, something not feeling right, but you don't know what is it. You know something is bothering you, but you don't know what is bothering you. What exactly negative emotion is bothering you. And so first we study and from the scriptures, and then in our own laboratory of our own mind, then we identify, oh, so that is what this delusion is identifying. And then in terms of applying the antidote, then of course there are many different types of practices. Mindfulness practices is just observing whatever emotion arises, whether it's a delusion, non-delusion, whatever, just being aware, but without being judgmental, without getting involved with that. As long as we don't get involved with that, then they are like a spark. There is no continuity. It's a moment and it's gone. As long as you don't give the fuel to that spark. If you start giving fuel to that spark, then it becomes fire, and bigger fire. And so those, or with applying, the wisdom into that, and then the wisdom of impermanence, the wisdom of emptiness, and through that again we can apply the antidote. So there are many different ways to apply the antidote in that way. So again, it is said, in many of the Lojong teaching and lumberings, for the beginners, when we don't have a strong practice and antidotes to delusions, the best way is to distance ourselves from the object of delusions. Okay? If I distance myself from someone who is annoying me, then maybe I don't have to get annoyed and upset all the time. Keep it a little bit distant. Because I don't have the tool to deal with that annoying. Okay? If I have the tool to deal with that, then it doesn't matter. You can be close and someone annoy, and you apply the antidotes, the meditation, the technique, and then you don't get so upset and annoyed. But if you don't have that tool, it's better to be distant. And then slowly, of course, you have to develop that tool, and then the tools. Uh, so that is through, the first one is through um, the behavioral actions. So the behavioral actions, our physical behavioral action is distant. And then second, through the meditations, by applying the antidotes. So in terms of anger, then applying the meditation of patience, loving kindness, compassion, kind of, and then applying with the view of emptiness, seeing the emptiness of the person to whom we are annoyed, seeing the emptiness of the person's action which is annoying us, seeing the emptiness of our feeling which is being annoyed itself. So try to applying that kind of wisdom, the view of emptiness, then again we try to apply antidotes in overcoming that. So that is intuitive qualities. And so then seek for the three principal causes. So three principal causes for the development and cultivation of two bodhicitta, conventional bodhicitta mind. And so here, three causes here is saying, relying on qualified teachers who have the experience of those teachings. And then our mind being ripening, if our mind is not ripening, then even we receive instructions, nothing change. But if our mind is open and ripening, then even the small instruction started to sink and started to really make transformation in the heart. And so ripening of your mind, openness of your mind, and then having all the conducive condition to practice, such as necessaries, basic necessities, food, clothing, and all of that. Basic necessities, so that we don't have to struggle running after that to practice. So when all of those three are there, then on the basis of that, then if we practice, then we can make a progress in cultivating the two bodhicitta mind. So if we have gathered all of that, then we rejoice. If we have not gathered any of those, then we try to gather all that. Don't let three factors weaken. And so the three factors that weaken our two bodhicitta mind, conventional bodhicitta mind. So those are, decreasing or deteriorating of your respect and devotion to the Guru, and not having an interest in practicing the Lojong, and then not keeping the precepts of the Lojong. So these are the three that could weaken our practice of loving the two bodhicitta mind. So we have to make sure that, never be parted from the three positions. So here, three parted from three positions. So bodily, always kind of in the service of the Guru, and then also doing the practice such as prostration, offerings, that, and then through the speech, engaging into the recitation of the refuge and so forth, and then from the heart, not separating the practice of two bodhicitta mind. So these are the three positions. Train constantly without partiality. And so again, value and encompassing the far-reaching practices. So again, it is similar to previously, practice all the time without partiality, in terms of object, whether it's a sentient being, non-sentient beings, whether it's pleasant, whether it's unpleasant, whatever situations that might arise, that we might encounter. So we try to apply all of them in the practice of Lojong, and in the practice of cultivating the two bodhicitta mind, increasing the two bodhicitta mind, and not deteriorating the two bodhicitta mind, and making sure that, and that will be the far-reaching practice of that Lojong and two bodhicitta mind. Train constantly to deal with the difficult situations. And so again, as we mentioned before, difficult people, difficult situations, we have to put more effort in the Lojong towards that. It is easy to have loving kindness, compassion, and practice the Lojong with the people who are nice and kind to us. But it is much more difficult to practice loving kindness, compassion, and the true sense of Dharma towards those who are not so nice and kind to us, which are difficult. And so especially for that, we try to focus more even on that, by understanding, those are the ones which really give us the opportunity to really practice and to really grow and to really know the Dharma deeply. Otherwise our Dharma become a very shallow, without facing difficulty and without practicing in relation to that, our practice can be quite shallow sometimes and very artificial. But in those difficult situations and with those difficult sentient beings, if we can apply those teachings, and if we are successful in that, then such practice become much more deeper. And so therefore, we should try to practice constantly in the dealing with difficult situations. Don't rely on other conditions. So, other condition means, waiting for all the right conditions to come together for our practice, the practice of, to practice the Lojong, for example. We always wait for other conditions to gather, and instead of waiting for that, whether you have gathered all the right conditions, external right condition or not, internal right condition or not, whether you have time or not, whether you have the finance or not, whether you have certain other responsibility or not, we try to apply that immediately. Regardless of whatever situation, we try to apply the practice so that we can develop the conventional and ultimate bodhicitta mind, and so that we can develop the Lojong practices. Otherwise, we can never find the time, Our life has already gone so far. Always feeling, we have been always waiting for the right condition to practice. So far, we haven't been able to find that. And again, we will be waiting for 20 years to find the right conditions, all the right conditions that will never come. If it has not come so far, for 50 years in my cases, if I don't make up myself, it's not coming from some outside there. All the conditions just coming for yourself. So therefore, instead of waiting to all other factors, conditions come, just start practicing now in whatever. So that is what. Engage in principle practice right now. So far, we have taken many lifetimes from the beginning lifetime in the different realms, and many times as a human beings as well. But we have wasted most of the time, and also even in this lifetime, I think a lot of time we have wasted. Most of the time we haven't been able to make it quite meaningful, as much meaningful as it can be. And so and so therefore, instead of waiting, try to make it meaningful. How can we make meaningful? Engage in the practice of the Dharma, and the practice of Dharma to reduce and overcome the delusion, and especially the principal practice is to reduce and overcome the selfish, self-centeredness and self-grasping ignorance, by cultivating the loving kindness, compassion, and conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta, and that can lead us to our ultimate happiness, as well as that can lead us to a state where we can be the greatest benefit to all sentient beings. And so so that is the principal practice right now. Without any principal practice is to cultivate true bodhicitta mind. Don't apply no wrong understanding. And so there is a wrong understanding, wrong patience, wrong inspirations, or wrong experience and taste, wrong compassions, wrong rejoicing. So here it says the wrong patience or the wrong wrong patience is that we don't have patience to practice the Dharma, but we have patience to engage in non-Dharma. Isn't it? When we're trying to practice the Dharma, we have very little patience. But when we are trying to be distractions, we have a lot of patience. So that is wrong patience. Where it is needed, it's not there. Where it is not needed, it's there. And then wrong inspirations, we don't have inspiration to practice the pure Dharma, but we have inspirations to have a success of this life, which is, we have so much strong wishes, inspirations to have wealth and reputations and all of that in this life, but we don't have same level of wishing inspiration to practice the pure Dharma. And so that is the wrong. And then the wrong taste, experience the wrong taste. Instead of experiencing the taste of through the practice of Dharma, through studying, learning, and meditation, we experience the ordinary taste of such as enjoying the senses through the five senses, the five objects. And then wrong compassion. We don't have compassion for those who create negative karma, but then we feel compassion for those who are really doing the practice of the Dharma. And it is said, it is maybe compassion and maybe the right, not word, maybe pity. Might be. I don't know pity. What is different between the pity and compassion? In English, empathy. Yeah, compassion, empathy. Not having a compassion for those who are engaging in the negative karma, but having compassion who are engaged in the virtues. And there is a story of, people feeling compassion on Milarepa because he's really practicing, he seems he doesn't have that, but they don't have compassion for someone who seems rich and very powerful, but who is really engaged in negative karma. So that is what it is saying. And sometimes that happens to us. And then wrong rejoicing, not rejoicing the virtues and the happiness of sorrowless state of nirvana and full enlightenment, but we rejoice for the misery of our enemy and suffering of our enemy. So those are the wrong. So we shouldn't engage into such, apply the wrong understanding of that. Don't be sporadic. So it means, sometimes we think of future life, we try to do that. Sometimes we think of this life, and sometimes we think of nirvana, sometimes we think, nirvana is not possible, let's think of just this life, enjoying this life. Sometimes we think of doing Dharma, sometimes we don't think of doing Dharma. Sometimes we practice a lot of time, Sometimes we don't do even 1 minute of practice, and so very sporadic. So it's hard to have a good result if continuity is very important. So here, see, when you practice the Dharma meditation, there need to be continuity if you want to have a good result. Okay. Practice unflinchingly. So here, when you try to practice, it's at the very beginning, it's kind of like a trying. We shouldn't be that. And then at the at the middle, when you face some difficulty and you kind of easily give up. Instead of that, from the very beginning, you should have a strong determinations. No matter what happens, whether your practice is going to be smooth without any obstacle, or whether you will face a lot of obstacles, no matter what happens, that I will practice. And from the very beginning, you should have that kind of strong determinations. If you have that strong determination, then obstacles will not deter you. Otherwise, if you don't have that strong determination, if your mind is at the very beginning, like, I will see how it goes. That kind of attitude, you will not make much progress. Small obstacle and you give up. So from the very beginning, you should be very strong about it. And then release investigation and analysis. So we need to release and free from the delusions, through investigation and analysis, through the alertness. So again, always analyzing, always analyzing inside our mind, always analyzing. Is any delusion arising? If a delusion arising, which delusion is arising, and how does it arises, and how should it and so that, but investigating, analyzing all the time. In the moment you find delusion arise, immediately trying to generate the antidote and trying to apply it, and through that then freeing yourself or releasing yourself from the delusions as soon as possible. That should be one of the main practice. And then don't be boastful, which we already talked this morning as well. And when sometimes it's saying, when we try to help and benefit others, we help and benefit very little, but we boast a lot and make them feel bad. I help so much and still, you are kind of ungrateful. And so we make kind of that kind of things, and so not to do that, Don't be short-tempered. And so don't be short-tempered by even in the small things, If you are short-tempered, then of course even very small things can affect our mind, and we can lose our mind. But if you are not short-tempered, and then even the big things, even the very big difficult things will not upset you easily. Don't make a short-lived attempt. I'm just wanting the difference between the 20 and 21. It kind of seems like almost very similar here. Because of short-lived attempt, if we say in terms of your practice, don't make a short-lived thing but a long thing, then it is also a little bit similar to one of the previous where that 16, yeah, it seems little 6. But if you take here is, here it says, in one of the teachers, if you have a very, if your mind is short-tempered, then you can easily be kind of changed by circumstances easily a lot of time. When you are happy, then you act like a bodhisattva. And when you are unhappy, then you act like a very poisonous snake. Mm. Mm. So it is saying, easily being showing happy and unhappy, that kind of display, even with a very short and small changes and conditions. We shouldn't be that, and again, we often see that, So basically, you shouldn't be so excited when things goes well, and you shouldn't be so depressed when things doesn't go well. You should try to be more equanimity and stable. Sometime in our life, good thing happen, then we get so excited, and then something goes wrong, we get easily so depressed, so unhappy. That is not healthy. Instead, good, bad, whatever happened, try to keep more equanimity, and so that doesn't affect you, and you can keep your mind more calm all the time. And don't expect gratitude. So when we practice the Dharma, and out of especially the Mahayana Dharma and Bodhisattva path, and out of that Bodhisattva path, when you're trying to be compassionate, kind, and out of that compassionate and kindness, when you are trying to help, benefit others, so then in those cases, don't expect gratitude. Don't expect some kind of gratitude for someone to acknowledge, praise you, whatever that kind of things. And so your practice is not dependent on others' reactions. It's just that you wanted to help, you wanted to benefit, and that is it. And then if you do that, you have less disappointment, and your practice will be more stronger, more effective. Okay. So we do the dedications, okay? Because I thought of having a question and answer, but I think we are over the time. So due to all the virtues that were created, may there be more peace, prosperity, and good health to all sentient beings in the world. And may all sentient beings only think of helping and benefiting each other, and not to get in harmful, hurtful action towards each other. May His Holy Dalai Lama, Kyabdi Lama Sowa Rinpoche, all the holy gurus, holy beings have long, healthy life, all their wishes be fulfilled. May each of us and all sentient beings be able to actualize that true Bodhicitta mind and quickly achieve fully enlightened state, and thereby leading all sentient beings to that state. Yewadi nyodo da lama sangye do gyo ne do wa chi nya ma lu pa e sa la pe pa sho chan jo sen jo ren po che ma ke pa na ke kyo che ke wa nyam pa me pa yang hong le hong du ke wa ka re ra we ko we shin gam de pen dan de wa ma lu chung we ne che re sen wa ten zen ja zo yi sha pe se de pa tu ten ju che tu tu chang shin chang pen jia we ten zen jong pe we fen tu tu po de cho song tu we le mo tu tu pa da so du je fen du sha pen. Thank you very much. Thank you.